Today I have an SAT reading tip for you that deals with answering question sets based on two passages. So whenever I'm answering question sets, such as in SAT Practice Test 5, questions 11 through 21, and I have two different passages, I use a certain strategy to make sure that I'm being really efficient and making sure that I avoid confusing different information from both passages. So I'm going to outline how I approach two passage question sets like this. So I'm going to go over to my right here, and I'm going to show you some notes as far as how you can strategize for these two passage question sets. So what I do is I read through passage 1 first. So I'll go ahead and read the prompt, and I'll read this little prompt up here that I'm going to circle in blue as well. I'll read that as my first step, just so I understand what passage 2 will be about in a general sense, so I can be prepared to answer that as well, or once I get to it. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to read through passage 1. Okay, so first step is going to be read through passage 1. So I'll write read passage 1. That's the first thing I'm going to do. Next thing is I'm going to answer the questions that are only about passage 1. So I'm going to write answer the questions on passage 1. So on P1 for passage 1. Now after I answer the questions on passage 1, I'll reach a point and it'll ask me something about passage 2. Once I reach that first question asking me about passage 2, at that point I don't answer it quite yet. I go and I read passage 2. So I'll go back then and I'll read passage 2. Now after I read passage 2, I'll answer the questions that are only about passage 2. So I answer the questions that are only on passage 2. So only on passage 2. After I answer those questions that are only on passage 2, at that point I will go back through and I'll answer any questions that ask me to compare or contrast them, or any questions that asked about both of them together. So if I saw passage 1 and passage 2 contained in one question, I will go and answer those. So answer questions on passage 1 and passage 2 together. Alright, so why do I do this? I'll quick explain this because I think it's really important that you understand why this is important to do. So if you read passage 1 first, what that's going to help you do is not conflate the information contained in passage 1 with passage 2. So by reading passage 1 first and then answering questions on passage 1, you're not going to confuse any information between the two. Because oftentimes passage 1 and passage 2 and paired passages like this, they're going to be about a similar topic, right? You'll have one that makes one argument and one that contrasts that argument, or one person that advocates one thing, the other goes against it, or the other goes for it, but with a different slant, and things like that. So they're often on a similar topic. So by reading passage 1 and answering the questions on passage 1 first before reading passage 2, it's going to prevent you from confusing the two and getting an answer wrong. Next, I'm going to read passage 2 and answer the questions that are only on passage 2. So once again, making sure I'm not confusing the information between the two by using this strategy. And then finally, I'm answering the questions that deal with them together. So by doing that, it's going to help me not confuse the information, not bring information from passage 2 into a question that only deals with passage 1. So that's my recommendations for questions that involve two different passages at once. Now, like I said, obviously I didn't put this as a step, but the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to read this entire introduction sort of deal, right, that I'm putting this arrow by that's circled in blue here. I'll read that first, then I'll read passage 1. So that's just one thing to add as well. So hopefully that was helpful. If it was, make sure to like, subscribe, and share, and as always, have a great day.